So you've spent some time in your departments proposing some vision statements for our district-wide science program. And as a district, we're going to come to a consensus about a single statement that kind of encapsulates our shared vision. Your department coordinators are going to walk you through that. You're going to have a form where you can vote on some of the suggestions that were made from members of the department as a whole. So the next question is usually the why or the how. So why do we take the time to work on a vision statement? And is anything really going to happen with this? I can hear it. We've done this before. Nothing changes. And so the question is going to be, how do we accomplish that goal? So that's a lot of questions. And to answer the why part, a vision helps us to set our sights on our end goal. So sometimes that can get lost because we work so hard to accomplish little things in our day-to-day tasks that come up our day. And we kind of lose sight of that vision of what we're striving for. And that drives the answer for is anything really going to happen with this? And so my answer to you is yes. Our vision is going to guide how we move forward as a district-wide department. So our efforts to improve our teaching and our student learning are going to revolve around that vision. So what really that brings us to then is how. And the other questions were kind of easy compared to this. The how is the tough part, and it's going to require the most out of all of us. So part of the how is to understand what the parts are that are going to lead us to our vision. So we have to look at some different components, and one of those things is a guaranteed and viable curriculum. So according to Mike Mattis, there are 4 critical questions in the PLC process that also apply to our work as well. So first we have to decide what it is that we want students to learn, and then we need to decide how we're going to know when they're learning it. And third, how do we respond when they don't learn it? And fourth, how do we respond when they do learn it? So as we consider what we want our students to know, we need to look at having a guaranteed and viable curriculum that has specific targets that students must hit. And we have to decide that amongst ourselves. So once we have identified our targets, then we need to select sound instructional strategies for our Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction. So Tier 1 being that what we do every day, and Tier 2 being interventions that we do when kids don't get it. So these instructional practices have to be paired with our purposeful technology use since we are in that one-to-one environment. We want to make sure what we're doing with tech is purposeful and good. So we're going to look at good Tier 1 instruction, good Tier 2 support, purposeful technology use. And since we are science, we want to make sure that our inquiry is integrated with our content, and that's important in our instructional strategies. We need to make sure that we have high quality materials that will help us in our instruction, and that's part of what we've been doing this year is with our adoption of new materials. We need to have support in place for you, for all of our teachers, to get to this shared vision. We need to celebrate our success along the way. We know that there's going to be bumps. There always is. In any process that's worth doing, nothing is ever going to be perfect, but we need to look for those moments where we did something really well and celebrate that. So then we have to ask ourselves is, how are we going to know when we got there? And we need to be able to measure our progress along the way. One way that we can measure our progress is through assessments. There are going to be many measures of our progress, from the classroom level assessments to national assessments. So in theory, if our classroom assessments and our district level assessments are really well written and purposeful, then our students should perform well at the state and national levels. But it's also understanding that assessment is an ongoing process. As our understanding of quality assessment changes and advances occur in our content areas, we have to adjust our assessments as well. Nothing in education should be static. So we need to make sure that our assessments are purposeful and they're accurate and they're formative. We have formative ones and we have summative assessments. And then we're going to use some of that information that we get from some work that we're going to be doing. We're going to be using some of that work about our guaranteed and viable curriculum to help improve our district assessments. I know there were bumps with our assessments this year, and we're going to get those smoothed out. So then the question is, where do we start our process? And where we're going to start is with our guaranteed and viable curriculum, because we need to have a common set of expectations across the district with regards to our state standards. So first, we need to start with a common understanding of what a guaranteed and viable curriculum would look like and what that means. So in your departments, I'd like you to take a couple of minutes and you're going to do this matching game. You're going to do it on your own first, not without talking to other people. I want you to match the items on the left, that curriculum, instruction, assessment, and grading, with how much control each teacher should have. Autonomous control, meaning that you alone get to decide what's happening. And you're going to match that, so should a teacher have none of the control, some of the control, or all of the control. And department chairs, if you can please pause the video for a minute while you do this activity. So we're going to start with assessment. As teachers, I think most of you realize that with assessment, you have some of the control over assessments. We choose what assessments we create to monitor student progress in our classrooms, but we also know that we have to give assessments created at least at the district level, if not at the state and national level as well. With instruction, that's all you. As a teacher, you decide how you will instruct your students using the available resources. You might have some inputs, you might have suggestions, but ultimately you're the decision maker with how instruction happens in your room. But here's what some of you might not like my answer on. With curriculum and grading, teachers are not autonomous. This is where we dive into what a guaranteed and viable curriculum really means. So Dr. Marzano did a bit more than just talk about teaching strategies. Before you can get into those effective teaching strategies that most of us have memorized, we as a district need to be sure that every child has access to the same content, knowledge, and skills, no matter what school or teacher they have. How they get the curriculum might be different, but what they get should be the same. And this is why teachers are not autonomous when it comes to curriculum. If we're making choices about what to teach in our classroom, then a student in my earth science class will not have the same access to every other student in the district. And if I put different targets on that learning through my grading, if I have different measures of what success is, then my students still might not have that same access to skills and content if my idea of proficient is not the same as other people's idea of proficient. And so with grading, we need to have those common proficiency levels as well to guarantee that they're getting the same education in different parts of the district. Now the viable part, let's be honest, this part can be tough. Our standards are about a mile wide and an inch deep. So we have to look at what can we do about that fact and still make those careful decisions to narrow that universe of knowledge, because our standards really do show a universe, and we want to make sure that we can narrow it down together so that we still have that guaranteed part as well. So that's what we're going to be doing for the rest of your meeting. You're going to have two different areas that you're going to look at. So we're going to try to narrow our focus a little bit. We can't change the standards, but we can narrow our focus. So in Strand 1, I want you to think about 5 things a student must be able to do in order to progress to the next science class or to be scientifically literate. So for us, Strand 1 is kind of lumped together for all of 9-12. So we have to decide what that looks like for a freshman to be proficient at a skill versus a junior or senior being proficient at the skill. So you're going to do this part first, and you'll do this with the whole department. Then you'll move on to your content-specific standards. And here you're going to be looking at 5 standards per semester that are not negotiable. They need to know these things, either to be scientifically literate in your subject area or in order to progress upon to the next grade level or just to be successful in life. And so you're going to be looking at some of those things that are not negotiable. You're going to be working in collaborations in Canvas, and I'm going to ask that for your content strands that you only use the comment section. On the Strand 1 also, I'm asking that you only use the comment section so that everyone can kind of see what people think, and then I'll take all that and kind of condense it down together. So the standards that we choose are not the only things that we will teach, but they are the things that we should be spiraling back on continuously to ensure that students master them. We're not saying that we aren't going to teach some of our standards, particularly when we're looking at our content area strands. We're not saying that at all. What we are saying is what is it that students have to know for certain, that if you don't know it, I'm going to come back and I'm going to teach it over and over and over again, and we're going to go over it in different ways, and I'm going to make sure that you know this. So we're going to look at this for Strand 1, and then you're also going to look at this in strands 4, 5, and 6 based on your specific content areas. In the Strand 1 document, I'm going to go back to this discussion for just a second. In the Strand 1 document, you will see that some of the boxes are already filled in. A few years ago at Boulder Creek, we had started this process a little bit. Those are just suggestions and a starting point. They are not set in stone, and please feel free to make comments, suggestions, and so forth. I did also put in the 8th grade standards in there so you could see what they should be coming to us with, so we can build off of that point. If you have questions, please make sure that you're talking with your department chair and talking with your groups, and if you need to, email me.